Today we are filming a Q&A about indie makeup. You had some questions to me over at Instagram. I asked you to give me some questions and you had some questions. You delivered. You delivered some really juicy questions talking about indie makeup practices, private label, PR, all of these juicy questions, and I do feel I have some insight. I have been reviewing makeup for almost a decade now on social media, and I do work with a lot of indie brands, and I do own my own indie brand as well, which is always linked down below. And this is not going to be me naming or shaming anyone. This is not going to be me giving out business secrets, but I'm going to be giving you as much information as I possibly can without giving away, someone's trust, because these are, after all, some of my favorite brands and some of my friends, but I will always be honest with you. So I'm super excited. And for this one, I decided to keep you anonymous because sometimes when I do these Q&As, I show the name on the screen, but for this one, I'm going to keep you anonymous so that if you put something shady, the indie brands will not block you. And some of them I will not get to. I got so many questions, so I will get to the ones that either were asked more than once, and of course the ones that I do have some insider information on as well. Some of them were a little bit intrusive, that's none of my business, and also stuff that's I don't even know what you're talking about, so I kind of skipped those, but I do have quite a few really interesting ones. Oh my god, I have so many. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. This one is a really good question, and I saw a couple of people asking this specific question, and I do know the answer to this one, so I thought that we could discuss it. So this question was, why do I see mainstream brands using Carmine more so than indie brands? I am allergic. This is a really good question, and I saw a bunch of people asking questions about Carmine, and I've seen some questions about some current mainstream reviews that I've done as well, with people were saying, I can't use this one because I'm allergic to Carmine, or I can't use this one because I'm vegan. This is the thing. The FDA, which is the authority that controls makeup safety basically here in the US, they have decided to be even harsher on the wording and the regulation around certain ingredients when it comes to makeup. And that specifically does include red dyes that are vegan for eyeshadow and blush products and stuff like that. And that specifically includes red dyes that are used in eyeshadows that are vegan. So a lot of these vegan dyes that were used in eyeshadows are used in pressed pigments or artist pigments, whatever people want to call them. Those are legal and available to use as eyeshadows and still label them as eyeshadows in bigger parts of the world, including EU, and I think bigger parts of the Middle Eastern and also Asia, if I'm not totally mistaken. You can basically use these as eyeshadows, and you can still have red colors and avoid Carmine and make your eyeshadows vegan. I hope that this makes sense. In the US, those have always been excluded, and it's not for the reasons that people think it is, because I've seen some people saying, oh, it's because the US is a little bit more strict. No, it's because the US has not updated this regulations and the other countries have. So they used to not be legal or okay to use in eyeshadows in the EU too, but the EU did some further testing and they recognized that the problem with these dyes is that they can stain the skin, but for most people they're not irritants. For some people they are, but for most people they're not irritants, but they can stain your skin a little pink or a little red. You probably have seen it with some powders that are out there. So they changed the regulations so you're able to use those and make red vegan eyeshadows and avoid the Carmine. In the US, they never updated that, and instead they said if any makeup brand wants to pay for that testing, go right ahead. But I don't think any makeup brand is super excited in investing millions of dollars in doing that testing so that every other brand can use that as well in the US. I don't think that's ever gonna happen. And then because of some of the lawsuits because there's a lot of more private lawsuits that happen here in the US than compared to a lot of other countries. There's been some lawsuits, you probably heard about them, with Morphe and Colourpop and Huda Beauty, where they were not properly disclosing on the packaging that these are not intended for the immediate eye area, which is how you've probably seen that on eyeshadow palettes. You've probably seen it on Sephora as well. And so the FDA just decided to tighten this up a little bit more and just say now you have to be super like specific with how you word this and the kind of type, like kind of wording that you're going to be using. And a lot of mainstream brands just decided, okay, fine, then our eyeshadows are not vegan anymore. So this is the reason why Natasha Denona, Colourpop, Huda Beauty, they don't do vegan eyeshadows anymore, because the FDA changed this law and they just like, we don't want to deal with this anymore. A lot of indie brands decided to jump through the burning hoops and go through all the hurdles, basically because the distribution is smaller and they are in control of everything. So they decided to do the specific wording on the back of the packaging and go through all of the things that the FDA want you to do to be able to still do vegan eyeshadows that had red pigments. Is it easy? No, but this is the reason. And if you look right now on most mainstream brands that used to have totally vegan eyeshadows, they don't anymore. And it is because of the FDA change. This was called the MACRA change. It happened in July this year. You've probably heard about it. A lot of indie brands were talking about this behind the scenes because they were like, we don't really know what to do, because they wanted to keep doing vegan eyeshadows, of course. And also these red pigments, some of them behave better in eyeshadows than Carmine does. So it was just a lose-lose situation. So with that being said, that is why you can now find Carmine in a lot of eyeshadows at Sephora and at Ulta. And it's because of this new change in the regulation around these red pigments for eyeshadows. It is what it is. And if you want to change with that, you're going to have to get FDA or the government or your politicians to pay for that research so that you can get those pigments like approved for eyeshadows as they are in a lot of other countries. Otherwise, you are going to get Carmine in your eyeshadows. It just is what it is. This one is very interesting because I think that sometimes we forget how distribution like works and what is possible for indie brands to do. This one is, please request indie brands to come to Australia. The shipping is so expensive. Brands, smaller indie brands, there are a difference between small indie brands and big indie brands. A lot of small indie brands, they might be 1 or 2 people working on operations. I know for me, my business is just me. I don't have any investors. I am the sole owner. I am the sole creator of this brand, but I do have help from like, I have a team around me with people. I have someone helping me with my website. I have someone doing product photography. I have someone doing product like designs. I have a PR coordinator. I have someone doing my social media. I just recently have someone that does customer service for me because I realized that it was just too overwhelming for me. And honestly, that's not what I'm best at. It's much better if somebody else can do it for me because they're going to do such a better job at it than I am. And it just stresses me out. But for a lot of indie brands, they might be a one-person operation. And to get to a new country, they need someone in that country to pick them up. So it's not up to them whether or not they're going to come to Australia. It is up to the makeup stores or the distributors that are in Australia to be interested in that brand and pick it up. And in Australia, I think the biggest distributor for indie makeup is Glam Radar. So if you want Glam Radar to pick up an indie brand, you're going to have to let them know. You're going to have to basically be on Glam Radar's Instagram and be like, I would love to see XYZ come to Australia. And hopefully people agree with you and hopefully they'll look into the brand, because for a brand themselves to get a new warehouse in Australia, start shipping in Australia when they are already just one person shipping from the US, it's not possible. And it's not the brands usually that reach out to the distributors. It is the distributors that are interested in the brands. Most of the time, that's at least what I've heard when it comes to like indie online retailers, because you can find my brand at Monolith, which is a European site. You can find my brand at I Feel Beautiful, which is a Canadian site. And there is also a couple of other sites that sell indie makeup. And like I said, in Australia, I think the biggest one is Glam Radar. And they have a bunch of different brands. I think they have Glamlight, right? And I think they have Lunar Beauty. So there's definitely options, but the smaller the brand, the harder it is. And shipping to Australia, for me, when I ship a package to Australia, absolutely bonkers. It's so expensive. This is a really interesting one. This comes in 2 different ones, and it is how hard/easy is it to see the pre-designed packaging and just go, okay, I'll use that one instead of designing your own. I think, again, the smaller the brand you are, the smaller the budget is to get something into production. I once have had a question for someone asking, like, why don't more indie brands do foundations, for example? And it's because creating a foundation line, like developing a foundation line, that could be $1 million. And I don't know a lot of indie brands that have $1 million laying around that they can just invest in something and hopefully get the money back in like, what, 2 to 3 years. I don't see that happening. And it's the same with packaging. Everything you do with a makeup product before it hits the market, you're paying for. So you're paying for the artist, you're paying for all the design choices you make, and the more advanced you make your packaging, adding, like I have this is the one I'm wearing today. I'm wearing the Rosy Jingle by Oden, adding this kind of like, this one is raised and metallic, and the soft touch matte packaging and the metallic edges. Everything you add to a packaging, they add on a cost. Okay, now it costs this much. Okay, now it costs this much. Okay, now it costs this much. And the more things you add to it, instead of just doing a shiny, just one finished packaging, the more expensive it gets, paying for an artist. And also the more you make of the packaging, it drops significantly. Like making 200 of something and making 2,000 of something, that can be a difference in $10 on the palette. Because that's how much it can differ, you making a lot versus you making a little. But also you making a lot versus you making a little can also mean tens of thousands of dollars in difference of how much you have to invest going into it. So I think a lot of brands will start out with something easy, something more affordable. That's why a lot of packaging sometimes is just the text on it, because it's easier to start out that way. It's kind of harder to grab on maybe to an audience if you just have a packaging that has the text on it, but it's going to make it a lot less expensive in production to do it like that. And also the more steps you add in and the more people you add into the process, I have a product coming out in a bit, hopefully. We'll see. And it took me months just to get the artwork done. So everything adds on time, and sometimes there's just too many loose things, and it's easier to just be like, the factory will just say like, oh, we can put it in this packaging, you can write whatever you want on it. And I think a lot of brands will just be like, you know what, that sounds great to me. I also did see someone asking thoughts on indie brands that use AI art hire creators. I don't know what they mean with creators. They mean like AI art creators maybe. That use AI, sorry. And she gives 2 examples here, and I don't know about one of the examples, so I'm not going to include that because I don't want to out the brand where I don't know the backstory myself. I hope that's okay. But I have talked about this before because I know there's been some discussions with some brands using AI while they've been searching for artists. Because I can tell you myself, me finding an artist for a project took me 4 months, and a lot of brands don't have that time, and they opt to do AI instead of doing just print on a palette. Do I think that's right or not? What I said then in the video was no, I would prefer if they didn't do AI or at all. But I also realized that I kind of understand when you have this vision for your brand of how you want it to look, and you just cannot find the artist that either does that style or is willing to do work for you, because that's been the problem for me. And you just like go with AI instead of just putting clip art, because we've seen a lot of clip art palettes from indie brands too. Let's be honest. That's like, brands are like, I did the design myself, and we're like, we can tell, everyone. It is plain to see. We can all tell that you did this yourself. So I wish that we didn't use AI. And I don't say that I understand, but I can see where they're coming from. They have this vision that they want the brand to be, and they're not able to find the right artists. But also I feel like I am not myself versed enough in art to fully give thoughts on it. But in that video, I wonder if I can find it and link it down below. That will probably be a little hard. There was a couple of really good like comments of people saying, some people that were like, I am an artist and this is why I think AI is good. I am an artist and this is why I think AI is bad. And I thought that that was very insightful, hearing both sides of the story and being able to have like a mature like discussion in the comments about like pros and cons of like new things that are coming to the market. Again, where I stand right now, I would prefer to not use AI. I myself am not using AI. But again, I will say finding an artist that has your style, because a lot of people will say like, oh, but my niece, she's an artist, she can do work for you. It has to be someone that does exactly the art that you want. They have to make it print ready. They have to be, you know, professional enough to be able to like actually make it print ready. Not just give you art, but like how do we make it print ready? And it also has to be someone, because I find artists sometimes, oh my God, I found the most amazing artist the other day. Not the other day, the other week. Mailed her, she mailed me back. I was like, I love your work. I would love to work with you in the future. She was like, I'm so excited. I asked her, what is your rates? Because of course, I always ask people, what is your rate? And then I pay them the rate. I've never haggled. I've never tried to get people to lower the rate. I always pay them the rate. And she never got back to me. And I wrote her again. I'm like, oh, it seems like my mail has gotten missing. Nothing. That has been my experience with a lot of artists. They will just ghost you. And it's a shame because her work was amazing and I would have loved to work with her in the future. It's just, she did not feel the same. Needless to say, that was a one-sided want. My side only. This is an interesting question, but I feel like maybe it's hard for me to see it because I'm like in it. Do you feel some people get turned off from indie because the same group of people get PR? I don't see it that way. And I'm wondering, like, is that an indie problem? Isn't that like mainstream too? Like the mainstream brands just send PR to the same people as well. Like all the brand trips have the exact same people going on the exact same trips. It's like this group of friends that just go with Tarte or with Kosas or with whatever and like just new destinations all the time. I don't know if this is an indie problem, but I think that sometimes people forget what is PR lists for. They are not for the creator. They are for the brands. The brands are sending out products to people that they hope will help promote their brand. And if they see a creator that's doing a really good job showcasing the products, giving proper detailed reviews, giving some looks, doing some swatches that actually look like the product, and that are giving fair constructive criticism, they might think, hey, I want this person to do my brand too. And it is really hard as a brand, and I'm speaking from like my brand owner perspective, it is really hard to find people that are not already on PR lists that you would like to find, you know, up and coming creators. It's really hard to find them because if they're up and coming, if they're not already on a bunch of PR lists, how am I going to come across them? I always love, and this is something that I do all the time, I talk to a lot of indie brand owners behind the scenes, and we always are like, oh, did you see this new person? I just added them to my PR list. They are so amazing. I think you should check them out too. We give a lot of constructive feedback behind the scenes, and also the opposite. Did you see this person? They were so rude and unprofessional. I took them off my PR list. And I'm just saying, you are not the salesperson for a brand, but the brand is sending you PR because they want to be associated with you. And you just need to showcase yourself, not in your best light, and absolutely never lie about products. Be honest. Brands want you to be honest, but also like, how would you feel if somebody talked about your product like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. I cannot believe that this was created. This brand sucks. This brand owner sucks. Other brands will see that too, and they'll be like, whoop, maybe not that one. So sometimes brands will see creators that are like, oh, I would like those kind of swatches of my brand. Oh, I would like that kind of look of my brand. Oh, I would like those kind of pictures from my brand. Or, oh, I love this review. I hope I can be included in the future. And they send PR to people that already are on PR lists. Is that good or bad? I don't know. But also brands are not here to do us favors. Nobody's entitled to be on the PR list just because you reach a certain amount of subscribers or just because you have been buying from a brand for a really long time. It doesn't entitle us to anything. Brands will send PR to the people that they think represents the brand in a way that they want to be seen. And again, nobody's out here, I'm saying nobody, and the people that I know, my friends, we're not out here being dishonest. I'm always giving constructive criticism and feedback on the products that I like and the products that I don't like. But the reason maybe why I'm getting a lot of PR is because brands like what I do. I don't know what to say. And there are plenty of PR lists that have been kicked off. Oh my God, I have a full video on that. Sometimes it happens. No hard feelings. It is what it is. This is a very interesting question because honestly, I don't know the answer myself. Why do some companies use fake swatches? I want to see what they actually look like or I'm not buying. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe it could be time crunch because there are companies where you can send them your color scheme and they will create digital swatches on like 3 arms of different skin tone. But it's like, it doesn't mean anything because they were digitally created. So I 100% agree with you. I think that it is partly, I think they're trying to save time. Partly, I think they're trying to save money because I'm sure that that is more affordable than hiring a full team. And also, I think it's some brands are very obsessed with everything looking cohesive. All my swatches are looking the same, which fair, totally fair. But yeah, I also don't see the point of those at all. Like if you're just gonna take the color of the pan and put them on an arm, just show us a close-up of the palette. Like, what was the point? So I 100% agree on that, and I have no good answer about that at all. This is a question that I got a lot. So are indie brands friendly and supportive of each other? I would say a majority, yes. I have gotten a lot of friends behind the scenes that I can ask about, like, what was your like situation working with this brand, or what was your situation trying to do packaging of this, or what did you do when this happened with Shopify, or packaging, or PR lists, or anything like that. And I have seen brand owners be extremely supportive of each other behind the scenes, sharing experiences, sometimes sharing developers as well if people are having problems with the ones that they are working with. And I think, and I hope, that even the brand owners that I don't see in those conversations, that they also have groups of people around them to help them out. But there is a bunch of brand owners that have helped me so much when I had a lot of questions about Singe behind the scenes. Amanda from Unearthly, Maggie from Blend Bunny, Marlena Stell, former makeup geek. Also Faye from Cosmic Beauty has been so helpful behind the scenes. Oh, and don't forget Christina from Gourmande Girls. Oh my God, she has been an absolute gem. There have been so many people that have like helped me out. The owners of Nomad Cosmetics, so helpful, so kind. Sandra from Adept Cosmetics, she is a wealth of information. She has so much information and she always answers any questions that you have. So there's definitely a bunch of people behind the scenes that I've never asked them like, oh, where's your shadows being made? Because that's none of my business. But you can ask them like, what did you do when the packaging happened to do this? Or what do you do when the warehouse is doing that? Like so many questions like that we can ask about, and that's been incredibly helpful. And I really hope that everyone has something like that. And I would suspect, this is me suspecting, I would suspect that bigger brands like mainstream brand owners have those kind of discussions as well. This is just me speculating. This is a very interesting one because for some reason, I don't think that people realize this, but I'm here to tell you that this very much does happen. Do indie brands share labs manufacturers with big brands? Yes, 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 100 million, zillion % yes. I know some indie brands that share manufacturers with some of the bigger, more popular brands that you see in Ulta and Sephora. Most definitely. That does not mean that they share like the formula. Usually they have their own formulas. They usually tweak it, make it their own, make it what they're looking for. Some tweaking is more expensive than others, and some brands, more high-end, stuff like that. But I know a bunch of brands that are producing in labs that even though they, of course, have their own formulas, it is the same lab as some of these really big mainstream brands are producing in. So it's definitely not like some labs are for smaller brands and some labs are for bigger brands. Sometimes they'll have a minimum order quantity on them, basically meaning that if you are going to order from this lab, you have to order this many thousand. And that can price some brands out because they're not able to buy that many. But there's definitely some really, 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 really multi-million-dollar brands that are sharing labs with some smaller indie brands, and I cannot, because of like non-disclosure agreements, let you know which ones. I'm not trying to get sued, but yeah, there is definitely a misconception that all of these high-end brands or all these Sephora brands are made in a specific facility. That is definitely not the case. That's not how that works at all. Ooh, this is interesting. Messiest thing you've seen a brand do. I've seen a lot of really weird shit, but I'm gonna talk about something that happened that I'm still salty about. That happened to my friend Amy from Amy Loves Makeup. She had a collab with a brand. It was like Amy Hearts Beauty or something. They are long gone, thank God. They are long gone, otherwise we could show up with pitchforks. They did a collab. The product that they sent out to customers was not as good as the product they gave to Amy. So it ended up being a super messy launch. Some people, I don't know if everybody even got their stuff. The product was not as good as what Amy has been approved, and they ended up never paying her. Again, I'm very happy this brand is gone, but that I don't understand how you can think that you can do something like that to an absolutely sweetheart of a person that Amy is, and think that you are going to be able to carry on as a brand. They were pretty much dead in the water after that. No creator that knew about this behind the scenes wanted to touch them with a 10-foot pole. So they're gone. And I am just like, yeah, that's probably the messiest thing I've ever seen. Thank everything holy that Amy has had a collab since then. She has a collab with Adept right now. I think it's still available on the Adept website. If you want to support her, definitely check out her palette with Adept Cosmetics. But yeah, that made me super sad when I heard like all of the things that have gone down, because she's such a nice person. And there are definitely, I've heard some other creators get some really shitty deals or stuff that's happened throughout their collabs and stuff as well, and it makes me really sad. But that is not like out in the open, because I know Amy herself has talked about this, so I will not be sharing that. But there are some brands that have been really messy behind the scenes, saying weird stuff, doing weird things to my friends, or demanding unpaid sponsored work, or just being bad people behind the scenes, that I've just stopped promoting them, stop talking about them, because I'm like, there are so many good brands out there. I don't want to touch this. This is an interesting thing because this is so individual. How much money do you need to start your own indie makeup brand? I mean, it depends on what you're gonna do. Again, if you're gonna do something with your own formula from scratch, your own packaging, you're gonna make a website from scratch, you're not gonna do like an Etsy store, all of these things add up. Product photography, you're gonna hire someone, you're gonna do it yourself. How many are you ordering? That's also gonna be a big difference. And I was lucky because I had money saved away, and I did invest tens of thousands of dollars into Cinch Beauty when I started it. But I know people who started their makeup brands with $50 and started small, built on it, and has a successful bigger brand at this point. Anything is possible if you're just very determined, but it just depends on like, where do you want to start? How do you want to start? What kind of products do you want to start with, and all of that. But I would say if you want to start like I did, with something bigger, with something that's not private labeled, with something with like a website that somebody has built for you, product photography, all of that. I did have a team starting out the brand. I did invest tens of thousands of dollars. And this, of course, is a hurdle for some people, and they need to start smaller. No hard feelings about that. I totally understand that. And there are some, let's talk about that soon actually. There are some private label stuff out here that is better than what you can find at Sephora. So I don't understand sometimes when people are like so against private label. Juvia's Place was private label in the beginning. Remember how we were gushing about that? I remember, you remember, Pepperidge Farm remembers. Let's not get snobby. This one is, what brands use private labeled shadows, the AliExpress kind? There are two misconceptions in this one, and I think it is so fascinating. I think a lot of people, when they say private labeled, they mean already made eyeshadow palette. You just put your logo on the front and you sell it. Much like Morphe did in the beginning before they did something on their own. They took pre-existing palettes, they put a logo on the front, and it's like, there you go. Also remember, sometimes brands, factories will do copies of mainstream things. And some people will be like, oh, look at this palette, it's just from AliExpress. But actually the AliExpress is the copy of the original palette. I think there are some misconceptions there, thinking that everything originates from just the pre-made palette at AliExpress. That is definitely not the case. Most indie brands that you see right now, unless they are very small and just starting out, but if you have heard about them, they're probably not using those pre-made palettes from AliExpress, putting their own. That's probably not how that is working out, because at this point, there are so many labs that will do custom shades for you and will let you alter the formulations of the shadows. Maybe not to the point that you might want to, and you might not get the best manufacturer in the game, but still, you can do something custom for yourself, not like private label, just doing a couple of hundreds. You don't have to do 10,000 palettes to get something that's your own. And I see so often people saying, this is private label, this is private label, this is private label, with me fully knowing, no, they're not. No, they're not. No, they're not. There are those some brands that will do a custom formula for maybe mattes, and then they'll pick like shimmer shades from a catalog of already existing shimmer shades, because this factory keeps making new shimmer shades all the time and they're so good, so there's no point in changing them. That's not necessarily how I would want to do something like that, but I totally understand. There are brands that do everything picked from a catalog. It's not that common anymore. Again, you have to be pretty small to have to like do that. But most brands, I would say 19 out of 20, when I see people say that's just private label, that's just private label, I know for a fact they're not. It's just not how it works anymore. You don't need to pick shades from a catalog anymore. Like, labs are happy to work with indie brands as well. What are your thoughts on indie brands who make it big and forget those who support them from the beginning? There is a lot of indie brands that used to be sending me a lot of PR and used to be super excited about YouTubers, for example, like Juvia's Place. I was one of the first people that had a code with Juvia's Place. They just got rid of their affiliate program and they are only working with TikTokers right now because they canceled their affiliate program. And I got like my last check from them. There's like, that's not an affiliate program that's been like very active as of late. And they were basically like, oh, when you get TikTok shop, hit us up. Because they're only sending PR to people who can promote them on TikTok shop. And that's just the way it is right now. I mean, look at Glamlight. I have been supporting Glamlight. I've been working with Glamlight and getting PR from them and having a code with them since Sweden days. Like old office Sweden days, mirror and the lights in the background. That's when I started using Glamlight. Way before they had the hamburger and pizza palette. I reviewed the palette they had before that. And I am not sad or mad to see that they have fully moved on to TikTok. They have found greener pastures. They think that that works better for them. So I don't think they even send out PR to YouTubers anymore. I have not gotten any of their last 3 or 4 collections, which is fine. Like I said again, PR is, at the end of the day, a brand sending you stuff because they want to be associated with you. Juvia's Place, Glamlight, there are other brands as well. They no longer want to work that hard on like YouTube or Instagram. So they're like, we don't care. We're not going to send to those people. We are going to work on TikTok exclusively, which is their prerogative. I mean, it's sad sometimes because you lose a brand that you're like, oh, I really love them. So, I mean, I still buy my Glamlight palettes myself, but now I get them, of course, after launch. So me making a dedicated review on them doesn't really help that many people because most people have already decided whether or not they're going to buy it. So I will say when it comes to Juvia's Place and Glamlight, and I know there are other brands too, made by Mitchell, P. Louise, if you want to see a dedicated review, I'm sorry, it's probably going to be TikTok if you want to see it before launch. I don't think that's going to happen on YouTube in the near future. Why do people think collabs are just picking shades? I don't know, honestly. Maybe it's because I remember when collabs was like so big. You know, I remember like Manny MUA and Jaclyn Hill and that group of people were doing their first collab. Maybe they were giving the impression that all it was you just picking shades and that was it. And maybe for some people it is that, but I know for myself and from some of my friends that collabs are so much more involved. And I also am thinking maybe it's because I've only collabed with indie brands, because I've literally been approached and they've just been like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do a big palette? Do you want to do a small palette? What theming do you want? Oden's I even let me change the pan size because they were doing those rectangular pans with and I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to do square pans. So they had the factory make square pans with the slanted edge for me because I wanted that. And now all their palettes have that. You know, this kind of a pan, the one that has like the square with the slanted edge, that was in the Hella palette first because I said, I want that. So I think that some brands are much more open for letting you change everything. And I'm sure there are brands that are just like, just tell me what colors you want. We'll send you when it's done. But I think that it's very individual from brand to brand. And I do think the smaller the brand you work with, the more they are open to let you do anything. Running the show. Are indie brands, I'm guessing that's what it means, are indie brands pickier than high-end brands in terms of PR? I would say probably, because I know that high-end brands, and you might think that like, oh, nobody's getting Tarte PR. They probably are sending PR out to 500 people. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised. I've seen some indie brands that have a big PR list that have 200 people on their PR list. But most indie brands have like 20, 30. Like that's the amount of PR that's going out. And of course you have to be a little bit picky because again, it's not that you want to make sure that people show your products, but you want to make sure that you're sending to people that you're like, is this person actually going to appreciate this PR? Because you're a smaller brand and PR is definitely not free. It's very expensive to send out PR. Whoever's saying otherwise, they're not correct. PR is expensive to send out. So yeah, you do have to be a little bit pickier. Of course, the bigger the PR list you have, the little bit more frivolous you can be with who you're sending it out to. But I know for me, and I know for other indie brands, we're keeping a pretty close watch on like who's enjoying our products, who's using our products. And if you send products to someone maybe 2-3 times in a row and they don't end up using it at all, maybe that person can be slotted out for someone who would enjoy the products. Because again, it is a business transaction and you can't just keep sending out hundreds of dollars of free products to people who don't seem to like them or use them. Why don't indie brands put less grams of eyeshadow in their palettes? I can't pan. I think that's very interesting. I think some brands, now because I have this one in front of me, how much is in this one? 22 grams. And it's like, what, 16 shades? So it's a little bit more than 1 gram per shadow. In this one, I think this is a pretty normal pan size, and also shimmers way more than mattes. So if there's more shimmers than mattes, the gram is going to go up a little bit. I don't know. There are some indie brands for sure that have pretty big pan sizes, and I do think that they would benefit from making it smaller because you are able to take the cost down a little bit. But of course, half the product in the pans is not going to get half the price of the product. That's not how that works at all. There's always a startup cost with producing something, overhead costs that's just going to go into the price of the product. So if you have two grams for $20, 1 gram is not going to be $10. Maybe it's going to be $17. So sometimes you are getting more bang for your buck with more like product in there. But I do agree, I also prefer when pans are not super big. This is an interesting one. Is there any options for neutral girls? It seems like indie equals full color. There are definitely really good neutral indie palettes out there. I know that Cosmic Beauty had a couple of palettes that were like a little bit more neutral. Glaminatrix that had a really good neutral palette. Lunar Beauty has some really good neutral palettes. Ooh, what else? Gourmande Cosmetics has had at least one really good neutral palette. There are some really good neutral palettes out there, but I will agree, most of the time with indie brands, and also you get more hype and attention around a product that's a little bit more kooky and out there. I think I speak for most brands when I say that at the end of the day, the product that sells the most, and I've heard this from indie brands as well, is usually something that's a little bit more neutral leaning. For me that loves color, that's not super fun to hear, but I do get where it's coming from. But there are definitely neutral indie palettes out there. Maybe that's a video that I can do. If you love neutrals and you want to try indie, where should you go? Let me know if you're interested in that. I can make that happen. Why do some brands work with the same colors, especially duo multichromes, so much? I think sometimes when it comes to doing multichromes, all of us, brands, creators, we're doing a poor job explaining like what is the shift. So when it comes to like a multichrome or a duochrome, the pigment that is doing the shift, there are not shifts, like endless shifts available. And you're not necessarily able to just create a shift yourself. You can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna mix these two pigments to get a lime to a blue shift. It's more the pigments that have that multichrome shift to them. They have the shift that they have, and then you can use them in different opacities and different blends. They come with or without bases. You can use a color base to bring out some more of some things and manipulate them to make them look lighter, darker, brighter, muted, more green, more coral. But a reason why we see a lot of red to bronze to green is because one of the multichrome pigments that you can make multichromes with have that shift. Then there are variations of a theme and all of that, but that's why you see some of those, because that's just one of the ones you see. You see a lot of those like pale green to purple. That's also one of the shifts that are available. So I think we're doing a poor job explaining sometimes with these, that you can't just willy-nilly yourself decide exactly what kind of shift you want. You kind of have to work with the shifts that are available in these kind of pigments, because it is almost a manipulation of light, and light scientifically works in a specific way. And then you just have to be smart with how you mix them and what kind of like underground, like medium or base color you have to make them look the way you want them to look. This one is, how much does it cost to produce, manufacture an indie eyeshadow palette? That can be anything from $3 to $40. I've seen some indie palettes, some of those that are really expensive, that cost like $45 to produce, and then you have to pay salaries and shipping like to the warehouse, and shipping like boxes and photography and like PR and all of that. You have to pay that on top of that, and of course the palette ends up being a little bit more expensive because the palette was so expensive to produce. So there are a bunch of different things that determine how expensive is this palette going to be. The main one is, how many are you making? One palette is going to be much less expensive if you buy 10,000 of it than if you buy 200 of it. So that's going to be probably your biggest determining factor on how expensive is the palette going to be. The second most determining factor of how expensive the palette is going to be is probably going to be what country it's produced in. And then you also have stuff like packaging. Like I said, how elaborate is the packaging going to be? How long did it take to develop this palette, this color thing? The longer it takes to develop, the more money and like salary and overhead costs you have to like get back from time lost in development, and also what ingredients are going in there. If you're doing a full matte palette, that is one of the most affordable things to produce. If you're doing an all shimmer special shades palette, that's going to be the most expensive thing to produce. If it's a mix between mattes, metallics, and maybe one special shade in there, or maybe 2-3 special shades, that's going to be, for most brands, the level where you can put yourself at a comparable Sephora level pricing without being like Dior pricing or Patrick Ta pricing at this point. But there are definitely a lot of different factors that goes into it, but it's probably one of the most determining factors is how many are you making, where are you making it, what kind of ingredients are you going to put in this palette, are you going to put those expensive pigments in or not, overhead cost, and how long did this process take you. This is an interesting one about my own brand. What direction are you wanting to take Cinch? What's your vision for the future? Right now, I just want to create a brand that has stuff that I really love and that I know that I can make like a great addition to the makeup community. For the longest time, I didn't feel like I had anything to give, but the longer I was in this community, I'm like, what am I talking about? I have so much to bring. I have so many ideas, and I have so many ways of like, I wish this was that, or I wish this was this. So right now, my vision for the future, for the upcoming couple of years, is probably just going to be like bringing stuff to the market that I know that I can do really well. And then I'm hoping for the future to also keep bringing out stuff that's not just for me. I want to, of course, bring out stuff for you as well, but we all have to start somewhere. Oh, this also, what will happen with Cinch when you move back to Europe? I'm just going to move Cinch with me. Like, the business is going to move with me to Europe, and I'm probably going to end up having still my American warehouse here, and I'll just have a second warehouse in Europe. I do have a European retail right now, but that's probably what's going to happen. So it's probably still going to be shipping some stuff from the US. This is an interesting one because yes, it definitely is. There are so many questions here that I'm not going to be able to get to. I'm so sorry about that. If you want to see a part 2, please let me know. Is there any rivalry for production capacities or time slots at the labs between indie brands? Yes, but not necessarily indie brands. It is because some of these bigger brands that I said, they're sharing facilities with the indie brands, and sometimes they will move you towards the back of the line if a big brand comes in and they're like, we want 50,000 of these. And then an indie brand that is ordering 10,000, they're like, and not even 10,000, maybe they're ordering 2,000, maybe they're ordering 3,000. So sometimes you do get delays with indie makeup because a bigger brand came in and the factory, they're gonna give their big whales the slot before. I mean, at the end of the day, it's business. They're doing what they can. So definitely there is some capacity problems sometimes, but it's usually because a big brand gets in front of the line. This is an interesting question because I think a lot of people were wondering when I started Cinch, they're like, why blushes? Why not an eyeshadow palette? Why are eyeshadows so good and the rest of it just meh? Not including your blushes. Thank you so much. I've just noticed this from other brands, and I don't think that it's meh, but when it comes to indie brands, the thing that really sells is eyeshadow palette. And we might all say that we're so sick and tired of eyeshadow palette, but for indie brands, nothing really sells as much for them unless it's eyeshadow palettes. I have heard though for some TikTok brands that like Glamlight has been talking so much about their lip kits doing so well on TikTok. I don't know if that's because it's a different generation. Younger people are more interested in cheek and lip products right now than over eyeshadow at this point in time. I have no idea about that, but I will say overall, I think a lot of indie brands will stick with what is more safe to release, so they know they're going to get the money back that they invested on producing something. And sometimes with blushes, lip liners, stuff like that, it can be as high of a developing cost, like the time it takes with samples and developing and packaging and all of that. That is as expensive. Of course, it's going to cost less to do one blush than one eyeshadow palette, but all that around cost, like the overhead cost, is the same with doing a blush as it is with doing an eyeshadow palette. And then you end up not having as a hyped product, because most of the time an eyeshadow palette is just gonna be more hyped compared to a blush. So I think that that is one of the reasons, because sometimes an indie brand can be smaller than we think. And sometimes an indie brand can be bigger than we think. Glamlight is an indie brand, but they're huge. There's a lot of people working with Glamlight, okay? Let's just get that out of the way. And sometimes I feel people talk about bigger indie brands and they talk about Nomad Cosmetics. Nomad Cosmetics is still a small indie brand. I'm pretty sure it's just wife and husband working. So there's definitely a variety in like how much you can test the waters with expensive releases, depending on how big of a brand you are and how much like money you have laying in the bank that you can just gamble with and just cross your fingers and hope you get the investment back. This is an interesting one. I've never thought about this. I feel bad using codes at indie brand, like I'm hurting their bottom line. Should I relax? I think you should see it like this. If you are here supporting the indie brand first and foremost, and you don't care if you get a discount or not, I should say skip the code. It's gonna definitely give them more money. But the codes are there to help you also get a discount. The codes are there to show the brands, where did you come from? If you got the recommendation from me and you used my code, the brand is going to see like, oh, this person got this recommendation from Angie. You get a discount, I get a kickback. And the brand has, of course, already calculated, they've already calculated this into like the margins of the product. So it's not like they're losing money because you're using a code. They've already taken this into consideration. What will this product have to cost if people use a code? It's a way for you to get a little bit of the money back on the margin and also help a creator out that you're supporting. So I don't think you should feel bad about that, especially if you can find a code that gives you a little bit of a discount. But the affiliate codes are there to give you a discount and to show what creators advice basically you were listening at, or what creator you came from, or what creator you want to support, whatever you want to call it. But I don't think you should feel bad about using an affiliate code. The brands have them for a reason. I think that was everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. This is a really long video. If you want to see a part 2, please let me know. I want to say I'm an open book, but again, there are some things that I know that I just simply cannot talk about. But before we end the video, again, thank you for being here. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave. I do a lot of indie makeup here on my channel, but I also do delve into some of the like mainstream brands at Sephora and Ulta as well, or drugstore brands, depending on what you're interested in. But yeah, don't forget to subscribe before you leave, and let's end with these 2 questions.